So hi Jenny, thanks for joining us today. It's great to have a bit of a chat to you about your background, your experience as a technical official.
Thank you, Michael, for inviting me.
Really, what we want to get is I suppose some of the background, and I suppose firstly is like how you became an official, but firstly, how did you first touch the sport of triathlon?
Well, originally, years ago, I was a tennis player, and after got a bit sick of tennis, and I was doing a lot of gym work, and eventually, I started running, and it was in about 2002 or so. I started running, and I joined a run squad, and the run squad that I joined also coached triathlon as well. So I was only doing the running at this stage, and I did spectate at a few triathlon events because I did know some people who did triathlon and who were very good at it, but I wasn't confident at that stage because I'm not a swimmer, and I didn't have a proper bike. I had the hybrid that people just ride around on, but not a proper road bike that you're meant to do triathlons on.
Yeah, so, you have to have the real stuff to do triathlon. That's right.
That's right. So I was a bit nervous. So it wasn't but I was interested. And it wasn't until I moved to Perth, I got transferred for work purposes, and it was there I enrolled in a 6-week program course for women. And I think, funnily enough, it was probably about a similar time or, the same time as Kathy Hoare, though we did go to different 6-week.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
6-week women's program. We had different coaches. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how it started. And that was late 2003.
Okay. So you started as an athlete, and then obviously at some point in time you became an official. When was that, and how did that come about?
Well, I was on a cycling holiday in Spain with the Perth Triathlon group that I was a member of, and I went over the handlebars and broke both my wrists.
Oh.
And and I was, I stayed on, and I couldn't cycle the rest of the holiday, but I went with the bags. But I could still walk around and see everything. But what was interesting is when I got back to Melbourne, I had entered challenge, or it was Ironman Shepparton at that stage. So I was out of plaster for 4 days, and then I did a half Ironman. And then I just suffered injury after injury after injury, and was really struggling to get back into doing the events well. And so to stay involved, I became a technical official, and that was early 2011.
Okay, and what were your sort of memories of that first official course? Do you remember who taught it and what happened?
Yes, Sally Ham actually taught the first technical official course. So, and then the next day I went to my prac, and I was there. That you're always in transition when you start off, but she tried to show me a few different things. So I went and watched the kids' events, which was that was good to see. And then in transition and just making sure that they got their helmet clipped on, fastened before they, take their bike off, and when they keep it fastened until they rack their bike. So
all that sort of basic stuff we first do, and we know obviously new officials come in. That's where you sort of start off. How did you then find yourself progressing as a technical official? What sort of things were you doing to progress yourself?
Well, first off, I was still really wanting to compete in triathlons. So for the first few years as a technical official, I was still training and trying to get back into events, and I probably only did a few, like the minimum events that you needed to keep your accreditation. But it wasn't till 2012. I had persistent injuries and I wasn't getting anywhere. And Triathlon Victoria were really looking for technical officials because the number of events in our state were dramatically increasing. It was around that time we had Ironman Melbourne, we had Shepparton, we had Ballarat, and we had 2 companies that ran local races. So there was a lot happening in Victoria at that time, and we just didn't have the numbers of technical officials. So I put my hand up and said I would help out.
So you put your hand up, or you get a sort of a tap on the shoulder and say, "We need you here more"?
Well, no, I put my hand up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
no. So that's how it worked, and it just went from one thing to another. So, I put my hand up, and then, I late 2012, I went and did the presenter, facilitator, and assessor course with the Australian Sports Commission, and then I started presenting the LTO courses and being the person who mentored the newbies, as we call them, the next day at their prac sessions. I was also starting to assess them with their field of play assessments so that they could be level 1 accredited. And then, after I did that, I was doing that, and then, I think it was early 2014, I was assessed to level 2. So, and it was during that time when I was presenting the courses, I was getting more experience in race referee roles. I was being offered race referee roles. So I was getting a lot more experience, and I'd done quite a few before I had got my level 2 accreditation. And once I got that level 2 accreditation, then I was offered the development, the Triathlon Australia development.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough to go to Mooloolaba, which was an eye-opener, and also to Ironman Cairns. And believe it or not, at those 2 events, I'm still now seeing the same technical officials whenever I go to, these events. They're all still around.
So you have so those are obviously that first time you stepped up and obviously became a race referee may have been a little bit daunting for you, especially because you hadn't even done the next level course yet. Can you remember what that was like the first time you did it? Yes,
I can remember my first race referee role. It was at a club duathlon race. Well, inter-club. So it was an event where each club hosted them, one each. There's about a series of 4, and so this one was the first one of the season, and there were quite a few competitors. It was a 4 laps of a 5K course. So, there were quite a few competitors on the course. So the TOs were out there officiating on the bike course, and they did penalise a lot of people for drafting. And there was one competitor who got penalised for drafting, but decided not to stop at the penalty box. So they didn't serve their time penalty, and they obviously got disqualified. They weren't very happy because when they finished, they won their age group by a large margin. Even if they had stopped at the penalty box, they still would have won their age group. But they were disqualified, and very upset, very irate. Lots of conversations about it, and eventually I handed over the protest form and said, look, if you want to protest, just fill this in, lodge the $100, and you can protest.
So this is your very first time as a race referee. This is all happening. Some people never experience this, but you got it your very first time.
Oh, this has happened. I've had a few first timers that have been like this. When she found out, or when the athlete found out that they had to lodge $100, suddenly they weren't so keen to protest, particularly when we intimated that they really they didn't have a case. So they didn't go ahead with it. But I was lucky in that there was another senior TO there who I could refer to for advice. But it was
a little bit nerve-wracking
for a first race referee experience. Yes.
I think it's important to know, because some people watching and going, oh, okay, I know some stage I might get my first race referee sort of gig. But I think what you sort of highlighted there was someone you could refer to at the time, which obviously really sort of helped you. So I think that's a really sort of good to know. Obviously, you weren't daunted by that. You did continue on.
Yes.
What sort of kept you, I suppose, officiating? Because some people start and stop, and it's not for them, and that's fine. And some people just do, their 3 races. They're very happy to do it. But then there's people like yourself who then commit to the program, and you've taken on several roles within the sport. But firstly, just as an official, what made you continue on in the sport as an official?
Well, I guess with these technical official program, there is a pathway and you can progress. So you're not doing the same thing all the time. So if I was being a technical official, I wasn't just going to the race and standing in transition at each race. I could do other things. So there's various roles. Sorry, there was various roles that I could take on. You've got your swim, you've got your cycle, you've got your run. And, I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed developing the expertise of the TOs in Victoria. And I was able to do that, travelling interstate and seeing what everyone did interstate, that really enriched my experience. And I thought, well, if they're doing that, we should be doing something like that too. And so it started to make the role of a technical official interesting.
Yeah. So you mentioned before, obviously you were able to take advantage of the development fund, which Triathlon Australia made available, and go to Mooloolaba. That was your first event as a sort of developer as an official?
Yes, it was. Yes.
And what was that experience like for you going there the first time? I mean, it's all new people. How did you find that first experience?
It was an eye-opener. I mean, it really was. It was because Mooloolaba has the ITU part of it as well on the Saturday, and then they've got the age group race on the Sunday. And I in a way I was overwhelmed because I really didn't know it was 100% what I was doing, despite having done a fair bit in Victoria. It was all new. I didn't know that many people, and then they all seemed so what's the word, confident, and they knew what they were doing, and highly proficient. And I felt like a fish out of water, to be quite honest.
Yep.
And I felt like I had to somehow keep up with all these people that really knew what they were doing.
Or appear to know what they're doing. We're all a bit like that sometimes. Is we just sort of have this appearance like we know exactly what we're up to there. So, do you remember what the first role you did at that event at Mooloolaba at the World Cup race?
Well, out on the ITU side, I was assisting on the run.
Okay.
So I didn't actually get out on a cycle. I just had to, kind of watch out for anyone coaching from the side, etc.
Yeah.
And that was mainly my role for that one. Yeah.
Okay.
And then on the next day at the age group, I was on the motorbike.
Okay, which is something you were familiar with, so it wasn't totally, but just in a different environment to what you're used to.
Well, it is, because I didn't know anyone, and then I penalised a Queensland technical official who was drafting, and they weren't very happy about it. And when I went to the far end turnaround where the penalty box was, I was turning around there as the competitor came in, and they were giving the penalty box person there a big spray. That was, if they were drafting, they should have got penalised.
Yep. And then obviously you moved on and had an opportunity to go to Cairns as well.
I did.
Soon after that. So how it was probably a form of racing you're more familiar with, sort of a long course style of racing. How did the experience go in Cairns?
Yes, Cairns, I felt a lot more confident, knew what I was doing. I was up there with another TO from Victoria was up there who I knew, John Trelaw, who was a very senior technical official at the time, and I think he was race referee. Mm-hmm. So he was nice. I could follow him around, and I got introduced to a lot of people and met a few more people, and felt a bit more comfortable. That event itself, though, it just poured and poured and poured.
Oh, you were there. I think I was there the same year. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, it was for Cairns. It was cold, and I think everyone got really cold. I think it took me about 3 hours in the shower to warm up afterwards.
Yeah, similar. So what was your role on the day there at Cairns?
I was on a motorbike.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. You went sort of tucked away in a nice warm penalty box with a barbecue nearby.
No.
Yeah. No, it's a one day. I think, people often say they want to be out on the motorbike because obviously where stuff happens, but it would have been the day of wanting to probably be in a penalty box.
Yeah, undercover, but no.
For sure. So those first two experiences, was something in general you sort of took away from them that sort of added to you as an official and sort of, helped broaden your knowledge? Obviously, it opened your eyes seeing, the ITU style racing in Mooloolaba, but sort of in a general sense, what did you sort of take away from those experiences?
Well, I guess that's what I did take away, the experience. I mean, it's all been, with triathlon, they do combine the education with the experience. And so it's been fun. Like, it's just, I've met a lot of people, from Australia and New Zealand in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's been others from Fiji, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, Canada, Japan at the last Mooloolaba event. So, you meet a lot of people and they tend to pop up at another event, and so you get to see them in the future as well. So, that's one good thing. And then, of course, you get the experience of improving your own officiating. So, and you can take that back to your own state as well and pass it on to other people.
Yeah. And certainly, I mean, obviously you've had a lot of experience over the years. Has there been particular times where you have been challenged? It could be, it might have been as race referee or a technical delegate, or even just as an official.
Yep. Okay. So this is another first one. In, I think it was 2017, there was a group of us who were lucky enough to be invited to attend the ATO course in Canberra at the Australian Institute of Sport. And so we completed that. It was a good workshop in learning about having, empathy and respect for people that you work with. So I completed the course, became an ATO, and then I thought, wow, what now? Am I going to get, appointed to an interstate role, like on the STT, on the STT at an interstate event?
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky enough, and this is another first one. So I was lucky enough to be appointed to race referee 70.3 at Busselton in the May. So it was an Australian long course championship, and it was also a world championship qualifying event. So and this is my first role, and
So it's not. You've obviously been a race referee before, but it's your first role interstate as a race referee.
Yes, first role interstate as a.
What's different about that? For those that haven't done it, what's different? I mean, about doing a race referee in your home state with people you know, and then going away to another state.
It's huge. The expectations are a lot greater. I was very nervous. I was nervous. I was just hoping, because each of the states have technical officials who have a great deal of experience, and suddenly, you're kind of up there with them in a way. Mm-hmm. So you've got to officiate to their standard and their level. So I was nervous.
Yep.
But this one presented a lot of challenges. I was lucky enough, or I was very grateful that they appointed an assistant referee, mm-hmm. and I was also very thankful that there were senior technical officials in Western Australia who could steer you in the right direction.
Yep.
But I was there for this event that I was at. The weather was atrocious. On the day, the weather was atrocious. There was just a squall coming through right when the event was on, and then the next day afterwards, it was just beautiful and sunny again. In fact, it even cleared up later on during the afternoon.
Yep.
But just right when the race was starting, it was atrocious. Like, I'd never seen horizontal rain before, but I have now. It was wet and windy. It was shocking. So poor Western Australia, the first thing we did on the day was there was a contingency meeting to see if there would be a swim, because they really wanted to have a swim. But unfortunately, they couldn't. It just wasn't safe, so there was no swim. Then, because of the wind, there were concerns about the cycle course as well. So there was some discussions about that. And then finally they came to the decision that would be a rolling start, a 3K run, and then they ran into transition. They'd hop on their bikes. So the bike course actually turned out to be okay. It was, a lot of it was fairly sheltered there. But it was when I got to the run course. So, the lead athletes, male and female athletes, are out on the run course. The male athletes all completed their first lap. The top 3 female athletes completed their first lap, but they had no time recorded at the far turnaround. So they weren't recorded as having, gone.
Oh, all 3 weren't recorded as going through, the far turnaround.
All 3 had no time for the far turnaround.
So when did you find that out? Was that at the time or later?
At the time. Pretty much. Yep. Pretty soon afterwards at the time. I think, the commentators might have known because, they've got. Okay. They can see it from there. They can see
the splits and everything come up on their screens.
Exactly. Yeah. So, so everyone knew about it, and then what happened? They all continued to race, and then 2 of the 3 females on the second lap tried to rectify the mistake. They knew what they'd done, so what they did is they ran that extra 400. It was only about 400 metres. They ran it again to make up the time.
The second time through, they did it twice.
Yes, they did it twice. Yep. Right. And they finished. So I was at the finish line. The top 3 females are finishing. So the first one crosses. The second one crosses and immediately lodges a protest against the winner because they've cut the course. And it was then that I had a very limited amount of time to gather evidence. And then we arranged for the top 3 athletes, top 3 female athletes, to have we got them and had a private conversation with them in a separate, area. I advised them that they were disqualified, but I did say that for 2 of the 3 of them, it was suggested that 2 of the 3 of them might be able to appeal because they had tried to rectify their mistake and they had completed the course. But I said it wasn't my decision. As race referee, they were disqualified, but if they wanted to take it further, then by all means do so. And they did decide to take it further, so a race competition jury was convened, and they went through their process. That there was much discussion, and it took a lot of time, but eventually they upheld my decision, and they were disqualified. Yep. So this is my first STT role interstate as a race referee, and I've copped another one. So, and I think it was quite significant, and it was, it was challenging.
Yeah, but certainly at the time, I mean, obviously you knew ahead of time this was coming, so it's not like you suddenly at the finish line you're confronted with this. You had some idea. In that time between when you found out and then it actually came to be that hit the line, what sort of things were you doing, or who were you talking to, and evidence were you gathering?
Okay, so I was at the finish line, but fortunately the other very senior technical person over in WA was at the finish line as well, and they, whilst not really providing advice, were steering, offering comments to me to steer me in the right direction. But they did allow me to make the decision, and then they gently guided, if you like. They said, right, well, you've got to gather this evidence, so we've got to get it done, soon. You can't take ages to do it. It's got to be done. Yes.
So so that was great. I mean, you had someone you could obviously refer to there, and I mean, essentially mentored you through that scenario.
Yes.
But also at the same time allowed you to make the decision, because at the end of the day, it's it's your name that goes to the decision on the violation report. So certainly a daunting thing to get in your first interstate race referee role. So well done.
Well, and I'm hoping that I did okay, because Western, I applied for a role at the Ironman in the December, the same year. They have 2 races, and I was lucky enough to get appointed as race referee to the Ironman 70.3 in the December. So I'm hoping I did okay in the May.
Well, they asked you back, so it couldn't have been too bad. So yeah. And obviously that next experience there wasn't probably, you weren't presented with the same sort of circumstances.
No, but again, there was a different challenge, which we sorted out. But yeah.
And I think that's important to note, is you never quite know what challenge you're going to be presented with as an official. What advice would you give new officials if they were sort of put in similar circumstances you have been? How would they prepare or be ready for those things?
Making sure you gather a lot of experience. It helps to have a lot of field of play experience, because no situation is the same as the one before. They're all slightly different, etc. And it's good to know how to learn to handle them. I'd also say you shouldn't, as a race referee, you shouldn't make a decision in isolation. You need to talk to people, and you kind of need to, you don't make a decision, you eliminate things that it can't be, and then quite often that leads you to make the right decision.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. So I mean, everyone takes away from these experiences their own sort of unique understanding of them too, which I think is really important to know. We all learn in different ways, and obviously that experience you now take forward to today. When you come into a race, you're probably a little bit more prepared, knowing these things could go wrong.
Yes, very definitely.
Yeah. Whereas some officials go for years and don't have any of the experiences, and then suddenly can be quite daunting. They could be 10 years into experience and had something like this happen. So you sort of had those sort of, early-ish on, I suppose.
Yes, I've had quite a few actually, and a similar incident happened at when the Australian school sports were held at Bendigo in Victoria. That's quite a few years now, but we did have another protest there as well, and a competition jury was convened. Yeah. You certainly learned a lot from those sort of moments. Do you have a favourite event or favourite type of event you like being part of? I thought about this, and I thought I like the local races because they're friendly, and you have that rivalry within the clubs and between the clubs. But I also enjoy the complexities of Ironman. Officiating at Ironman, it is a bit more complex. And also then you've got I call it the pomp and ceremony of the ITU, where you've got to be spot on. And, that's another different kind of race, which requires different experiences.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of particular moment in triathlon you've witnessed, that has inspired you or you found inspiring?
So I was at the World Champs on the Gold Coast in 2009. And I can remember watching it. I wasn't a good enough athlete, or I hadn't even tried really to see if I could be part of the team. But I was watching, and it's just good to see that everyone, of all ages and all abilities, can compete on the same field of play. And I thought that was good. Just seeing everyone was racing. Some were good, some weren't so good, but they were all out there having a go.
Yeah. So you were spectating then, or officiating then?
Spectating. Yeah.
So you just went up there to have a look and.
Well, I enjoyed it. I was actually doing the people's race after the ITU race.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's what I went up for.
Fantastic. So you certainly just being around that event obviously did make a big difference. You've obviously given a lot to the sport. You've educated a lot of people over the years and brought a lot of people through the program. Certainly in Victoria, and had the opportunity to go into state, which has been fantastic, and something I gather you'd encourage new officials to do as well.
Oh yes, for sure. It is. With triathlon and officiating, it's never the same. It's always varied. You normally get different roles. You meet different people. You come across different situations. So there's plenty of variety and plenty of things to enjoy about the sport.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jenny. Thanks for joining us today. It's been great to sort of hear your experiences, and thank you being so open and sharing some of those ones that were probably a little bit daunting in the early days.
Yep.
And we look forward to catching up with you soon.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael.